This is Naina, and she runs a private kindergarten at her fiance's home. And the kids she regularly sees have been missing her since she took a few weeks off on a sick leave. And now she's back today, and the kids' parents are very happy to see her because she's really good with kids. And her partner Rohit is a criminal prosecutor, and he tells her about his big case that he's currently working on. And he also asks her if he can throw a birthday party for her tomorrow with just a few friends. And Naina's not really a celebration person, but she agrees to have their birthday as long as he keeps the guest list very, very small. And today, she's actually planning to celebrate one of the kids' birthdays. And after everyone left, Naina opens cartoons for the kids and she goes to her bedroom. And in her room, she takes out her phone and a duffel bag and she calls the police. And she tells the police that she's now holding 16 kids hostage. And she also tells the police that she has demands, and then she hangs up the phone and then she waits for the cops to arrive. And while she was waiting for the cops to come, the driver that was sent by one of the moms arrives with a cake and a bunch of sandwiches. And as he was trying to put away the sandwiches, he notices the gun that she had tucked into her back. And he gets quite scared, and she notices him noticing her, and she pulls out her gun and aims it at him, and then she puts him down on a chair and she ties him up. And this is when she hears the back door opening, and when she goes to check it out, it was her assistant who returned because she forgot her phone. And she decides to ambush her own assistant as well, and she ties her up on a chair too. And the police thought it was some kind of prank when she called them, so they just sent one officer to check. And when he did check through the window, he just saw a bunch of kids watching cartoons and having fun. And Naina sees him from her window, and when he was about to leave, thinking that it was actually a prank, she opens the door and she fires her gun in the air. And with this, the police now know that she was not joking at all. And this one officer calls everybody, and a high-ranking officer, Neha, calls Naina and asks her what she wants, and Naina tells her that she wants to talk to Inspector Javid. And Naina also tells her that she only has 1 hour to comply, and after she told her that, she just hangs up the phone. And the kids were oblivious to what was going on, and some of them wanted to go to the bathroom. So Naina unties Severity, and she tells her to take care of it, and she also tells her that if she tries anything, she's gonna kill some of the kids. And after Naina tied up her assistant again, after she helped her with the kids, we see Officer Neha preparing a tactical team to get inside the house. But at this point, Inspector Javid gets there, and he tells Officer Neha not to do anything with the tactical team because they can't risk Naina shooting these kids. But Officer Neha is convinced that Naina just wants attention and she's not actually gonna shoot one of these kids. And if the tactical team manages to rush her, she'll just submit and not do anything. And after a little back and forth, they agree to hold off on the tactical team just for now. And in a little while, Naina releases a video on social media claiming that she has 16 kids hostage and the police are responsible for what happens to them and that they should comply to her demands. And since she posted this on social media, and since all the parents follow her account, they see this video and they rush to the kindergarten where the police have barricaded the entire block. And at this point, the police have gathered residents around that area and they were asking questions about Naina. And one woman tells the police that that house is actually owned by her fiancé, Rohit. And when the police call him, he tells them that he's actually rushing to the house right now and that Naina is not picking up her phone. And Inspector Javid finally calls Naina and he asks her why she wanted to talk to him specifically. And she tells him that it's because he's a super cop. And after she called him a super cop, she tells him her demand, which is to have 50 million wired to her bank account. And only then will she release one child because this is just one demand. And Javid tells her if he does wire her 50 million bucks, she's gonna have to release all the kids. But Naina wasn't having any of this, and she doesn't care what Javid thinks should happen. And she tells him that if he doesn't wire her the 50 million in 1 hour, she's gonna start killing these kids. And how she's gonna do it is, she's gonna kill one kid every hour. And hearing all of this, Neha was not happy and she decides to just go with the tactical team approach and just raid the house. And one of the parents to the kids was a news anchor, and she sees on social media how Naina plans to kill the kids alphabetically. And as news about Naina and the 16 kid hostages were circulating around, the commissioner gets on the scene, and Officer Neha tries to convince him of using the tactical team. And Javid tries to argue against it, but the commissioner sides with Neha and they decide on the tactical team. And as soon as they decide this, the cops cut off communications with Naina and the tactical team slowly moves in. But before Naina lost all connection, she notices one of the cops approaching and she opens the door and she shoots. And the tactical team get ordered to fall back since Naina knows that they're coming now. And after the officers fall back, Naina gets very frustrated that her demands are not being met and that the police are actually being very hostile to her. So she calls Inspector Javid and she tells him that it's his fault, and she takes one of the kids, Akash, to another room and she records a video of her shooting him and she releases it on social media. And after the very devastating video, the police actually find out that this girl's not messing around, and they decide to send her 50 million, and because of that, she releases one kid because one of her demands are now met. And for her second demand, she tells them to arrest two people, Rakesh and Charan. And she also tells them her third demand, and this time is to speak to the Prime Minister of India. And she tells Javid that he only has 1 hour to make this happen. If the Prime Minister doesn't contact her within an hour, she's gonna kill another kid. And she also posts this demand on social media, and she tells everyone that the kids' lives are now in the hands of the Prime Minister. And at this point, Prime Minister Maya gets bombarded by questions from the press, and this issue has become national news. And the polls show that 60 to 75% of people don't want the Prime Minister talking to this terrorist. And her advisors agree with that statistic and they tell her not to do anything. But when Prime Minister Maya sees Naina releasing one of the kids, she agrees to talk to Naina. Her advisors obviously argued against it, but Prime Minister Maya didn't want to risk another child. And by this point, Naina's fiancé, Rohit, got to the scene of the crime and he was being investigated by Inspector Javid. And Rohit tells Javid that this is something he never foresaw because Naina is not the kind of person that would ever do something like this to somebody. And he begs Javid to call her so he can talk to her. But when Javid called and he gave him the phone to talk to her, she hung up instantly when she realized that it was her fiancé. And after Naina hung up on him, Rohit tries to help the police as much as he could, and he tells them everything he knows. He tells them that she sometimes goes to her mom and she stays there sometimes. And Javid sends a bunch of officers to the mother's house just in case if they can find some clue as to what's really going on here. And Prime Minister Maya finally gives a call to Naina, and Naina is very happy to hear this. And she tells her that she's gonna release two kids because of this, and she tells the Prime Minister her next demand, which is the Prime Minister has to come to her house and speak to her face to face. And if the Prime Minister can come to her house and speak to her, she promises to release all the kids, aside from the one that she killed. And she gives Maya 1 hour to get to her house, or she'll start killing again. And some of the officers that went to Naina's mother's house, including Officer Neha, find out that Naina's mother is actually in a meditation wellness center, and Officer Neha discovers a newly bought antidepressant pill. And after calling Officer Javid and telling him all of this, Neha and the rest of the officers go to find Naina's mother. And when Javid hears this, he gets very angry at Rohit, and he starts asking him if he's lying or keeping anything else away from him. And Rohit tells him that she stopped taking pills years ago, and the last time she was on antidepressants was actually when her father died, and she kind of got a little depressed then, but after that, she didn't really take any medication, and this is everything that he knew about her medical history. And Naina releases two kids as promised, and she waits for the Prime Minister to arrive. And the Prime Minister does want to go and speak to Naina, but her generals call Javid and tell him that the Prime Minister will not be coming. And Javid calls Naina and tells her that. And Naina gets very frustrated by this, and she takes a bunch of pictures. She takes a picture of one of the kids, she takes a picture of her assistant and the driver, and she creates this poll on social media asking people to decide who dies next. And Prime Minister Maya notices this poll on social media, and she gets very angry at her generals for making a decision without her consent. And she tells them that she's gonna go and speak to Naina no matter what. And meanwhile, Officer Neha has contacted Naina's mother, and they've also figured out who Naina's therapist is, and they're trying to make contact with her as well. And Naina was actually waiting for the polls to finish so that people actually vote on who dies next. And as she was waiting, she decides to have the birthday for one of the kids that she was actually planning to do. And then we see her having a flashback of her having her own birthday when she was a kid on her school bus. And then we see that after her birthday, she was alone on the bus, and we see the driver looking at her really weird. And her flashback is interrupted, and then she notices the poll, and she sees that people have actually voted for the driver to die. And she shows him this, and she tells him that it's probably because people don't like his face. And as she was getting ready to shoot him, Savirti asks to go to the bathroom, and when Naina unties her, she pushes her to the ground, and Naina drops her gun. And Severity tries to untie the driver as fast as possible, and then he immediately tries to reach for the gun, and Naina was also reaching for the gun, and he tries to overpower her and they end up fighting, but Naina manages to shoot him on the leg. And after she shot him, she ties both of them up again, and she records a video saying that she's fed up with the Prime Minister, and if the Prime Minister doesn't show up soon, she's gonna shoot all three people, the driver, her assistant, and the kid. And Javid was interviewing Naina's mother and asking her what possible motives she may have for doing this. And the mother tells him that it's actually kind of his fault too. And Javid is very intrigued by this. And the mother goes on to explain that years ago, when he was a young detective, she came to the police station and told him about her daughter's rape. And here Javid gets a flashback of what happened. And he sees the mother explaining that her daughter got raped on a school bus. But since Javid was actually chasing after bigger fish at that moment and trying to catch other criminals, he didn't really focus much on Naina's case. And Officer Neha talks to Naina's therapist, and the therapist tells her that Naina was on antidepressants ever since she was 16 because she couldn't cope with what happened to her on that school bus. And at this point, the Prime Minister arrives at the scene, and Javid tries to explain everything to her, and the fact that she was raped as a 16-year-old, and that's probably the motivation for everything that's going on now. And Prime Minister Maya invites her to come outside and talk to her, and Naina invites her to come inside the house. And the Prime Minister tells Naina that she can't be in the same house as a murderer. And Naina goes silent for a few seconds, and the door is open, and Severity and the kid that was supposed to be dead, Akash, come out. And everyone is now very confused as to what's going on, because apparently Naina faked this kid's death, and she's not really a murderer. And she tells this to the Prime Minister, and she tells her that she just wanted to talk. And Prime Minister Maya at this point agrees to go inside, but she wants to be accompanied by Javid. And Naina asks him if he's arrested the two people that she told him to arrest, and he tells her that he arrested one of them and that they're still looking for the other one. And then Naina live streams her conversation with the Prime Minister, and she asks the Prime Minister to send the 50 million to different accounts, and when the Prime Minister asks who these people are, Naina tells her that it's actually NGOs that work in grape rehabilitation. And this is just the start. Naina wants capital punishment passed for grape. Capital punishment meaning death if you ever grape someone. And the Prime Minister tells her that it's going to be quite difficult to pass that kind of law, and Naina tells her that every 16 minutes somebody's graped in India, and that's just a national statistic, but nobody seems to be doing anything about it. And the Prime Minister promises to do what she can, and she also promises to do something about the graped Naina when she was just a kid. And Naina tells her that the man that they have in custody is not actually the man that graped her. And when the Prime Minister asks who he is, Naina tells her that he's just somebody that watched and held her down as the other man graped her. And then Prime Minister Maya promises to find the other guy that actually graped her, but Naina tells her that there's no need to look for that person because that person is right behind her. And by right behind her, I mean it's the driver. Apparently it was this guy that raped her all those years ago, and when she saw him 3 weeks ago, driving around another girl, she was deeply disturbed because she thought he would do it again. And then Naina points her gun at him, and she asks him to confess. And this guy just says that he doesn't know who she is or what she's talking about. And he begs Javid to stop her, and Naina gets really angry because he's denying everything that he did. And the Prime Minister tries to calm her down, and in the midst of all of this, he tries to go and grab Javid's gun, and he actually tries to shoot Naina. But apparently Javid's gun didn't have any bullets, and Naina ends up shooting him multiple times, and she kills him. And the police rush in and they arrest Naina, and when they take her out, her husband had this look on his face as if he was proud of her and what she did. And Naina gets sent to prison, obviously, but the Prime Minister haven't really forgotten her promise to Naina, and she starts to push for the bill that would actually make graping punishable by death. And 6 months later, in prison, we see Naina reading a newspaper, and on the front page, she reads that the Prime Minister actually made graping a capital crime. And seeing that her efforts didn't go to waste, Naina actually smiles at this and she continues to teach her class, and that is how the movie ends. I hope you guys liked our recap. Remember to leave a like, leave a comment, most of all, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.